I think people need to understand that what the Bank of International Settlements did to the BRICS at the 12th hour, I think they've changed the way that they are going to be open and forthright about their developments. And I guess to me, de-dollarization is not stopping. In fact, net since 2014, there hasn't been any central bank buying of U.S. Treasuries. Net, they've all been sellers and buying things like gold. And certainly the unwinding of the Japanese carry trade is not going to be bullish for the U.S. and U.S. investments. And I think will only further incentivize de-dollarizing and getting away from the traditional things that they invested in. And all of these things are happening, but I don't think they're going to be as open about it. What I noticed that I figured was at least worth talking about is that you have a Russia, China, and Iran joint naval drill right now going on. And I think the shared interests of countering the U.S. influence, whether it be with the U.S. Navy militarily or on a broader sense, globally as a, this trend of moving away from the dollar and the hegemony and the influence is continuing. There will be things to talk about month over month, and there will be I believe, a emphasis on a Western slant on all the media reporting to make it look like it's nothing. But they are not ending their aspirations. And when you see joint naval exercises again between Russia, China, and Iran, that should carry a significance that people need to understand. That's, to me, their way of saying, no, we're not going away. Just because President Trump is here, we still have our agenda, and our agenda will continue. They think, and even the way Trump talked about, he says, we need to think more like China does. Instead of thinking quarter to quarter, we need to think in terms of 100 years. So that's the way that they think. And I think that they are continuing with their development. And maybe it was the best thing to happen. Pump the brakes a little bit, really solidify the way that they're going to do things. And the whole concept of a common currency, that you can put that on the back burner. You could argue gold is already acting as a common settlement currency for these nations that are trading in local currencies, settling in gold, and continuing to advance their agenda. Joint military exercises certainly sends a message, when you have these three entities collaborating, and makes you wonder, when two of the three are nuclear powers, how far behind is Iran now that they are joining in this endeavor? These are things that should be taken again very seriously. And maybe this is part of the reason why all of a sudden you've seen this, this massive shift from risk on to risk off, just like that. I mean, I've never seen such a shift from massive euphoria, risk on, everything's amazing, to all of a sudden you look at the insiders and the hedge funds that are moving away from this. It's almost like these people know exactly what is coming, just like Jamie Dimon does, just like Warren Buffett does. It's not going to be an easy transition, an easy lift for whatever Trump wants to do. And I don't think he's dissuaded these countries from continuing on their agenda, just maybe in a little bit more opaque manner, not so much in your face. Even though this is kind of in your face, it certainly, I think, is worth mentioning that, this means to me that they're still moving forward with the agenda. I don't know if I'm gonna be able to find this letter, which absolutely I could read it. Since I started talking about that feedback that I've gotten from people and the depth at which these people have had their lives destroyed, I really can't even begin to explain what it's like. It's horrific. Silver right now, it's going to be closed. Looks like it closed at $33. So that's the line in the sand that they've been defending.
Yep.
Could this be the beginning of a run in silver? Man, it's long overdue. The little boy who cried wolf, the wolf does come. And yes, someone said, was it me? I was, to my knowledge, I was the first one to talk about silver having a 500-ounce amount of silver in the cone of a Tomahawk cruise missile, long before Silver Wars came out, between 13 and 14 kilograms in every Tomahawk, and lots of these other high-tech missiles. So ask yourself, why would 8 commercial banks hold the largest concentrated short position in any commodity ever traded in the history of the COMEX, that being in silver, the tiny little silver market? It's because they need to keep it cheap and off the radar so they can build weapons to fund wars all around the world. And, you know, when we confiscate $5 billion in Russian Forex reserves, we didn't give it to them purely in cash. What did we give it to them in? Oh, yeah, weapons that they bought from who? The military-industrial complex. That's owned by who? BlackRock. And who got all the reconstruction contracts? Oh, yeah, that's right. It's BlackRock. And so you look at who are all the weapon manufacturers? BlackRock owns them all. And so this is deeper than people have given any credit to. And BlackRock and the military-industrial complex and all of these Raytheon and Boeing, all of these massive military companies that need silver to make aerospace, submarines, and high-tech weapons, they all need silver. This dude said to me, you are right. There are 500, almost exactly 500 ounces in the cone. But nonetheless, I think anything high-tech these days. Look, in 1942, there is S.2768. Google it. It's a congressional hearing where they say, by next year, we will need 200 million ounces a year. Currently, it's 100 million ounces a year for war purposes. By next year, 200 million. In 42, for God's sakes. Well, how much more advanced are these weapon systems now? And they all need silver in the guidance systems. And especially for an extended period of time. Well, for a long period of time, no one wanted commodities. They just wanted US dollars and treasuries and real estate, and, you know, because that was safe and lucrative. And since 1982, since rates have been falling, been going straight up. Well, that's changed. And now, not only is there a drive to get gold and silver, which gold is the only other tier 1 asset in the world, but they've lost globally faith in the West, whether it be England or the EU or the United States. So all of these players are taking their toys and going home. Give me my medal. I don't want to leave it with you anymore. India just brought 100 metric tons home from the Bank of England that they've held since 1991. They're bringing all their toys home, not only from the US, but also the Bank of England. And this is no longer about we trust you. It's about show it to me. And that's where things get really interesting very quickly. So I think this will be a very interesting year, more so than people expect. I think it could be really, really kind of frightening, exciting, interesting to say the least, but that is a Chinese curse, you know. For 5,000 years, the geological ratio was 16 to 1, 16 ounces of silver to 1 ounce of gold. Even when Sir Isaac Newton was figuring out the relationship between gold and silver for the mint, I don't know how many 200 years ago, he used a 16 to 1 ratio. And once we hit the Industrial Revolution, largely because gold was money and silver, industrial and storage and logistics, man's ratio moved to roughly, on average, for the past 150 years, about 42 to 1, on average, sometimes higher, sometimes lower. The geologic ratio stood at 16 to 1. Big deposits were found forever ago. I've had the good fortune of having, dinner with Keith Neumeyer a few times and getting to pick his brain. And he said, man, there's only a handful of silver companies out there. Most of the silver that comes to market, about 75 to 80%, is byproduct of companies that are mining something completely different and stumble across silver. I said, well, why are there only a handful of silver companies? Because it's hard to find, and most of the big deposits are gone because it was so close to the surface. They were found even before advanced imagery. And he's like, what's real right now? It's 7 to 1. 2 years, 3 years ago, 4 years ago, no, 6 or 7 years ago, he told me 8 to 1. Recently, he said 7 to 1 to me. And so it's depleting in nature. And so at a 7 to 1 ratio, yet it's priced at roughly 85 to 1 because of the suppression on COMEX and the LBMA, it's the opportunity of a generation. It looks like it's the second time as far back as I can go in history that it's been 85 to 1. I said, let's do a podcast. We'll tell everyone to sell their gold. I'll buy it and sell it to the market, and we'll switch them into silver. So in theory, that's what it would be. 7 or 8 months later, in mid 2011, you had $50 silver and 1915 gold. Now remember, the average price for the 150 years is 42 to 1. We'll divide 37 into 1915, you get 37 to 1, not 42 to 1. 37 just past its 150-year average. Still 6 times higher than it's coming out of the ground at. But so if you would have traded me in mid 2010 an ounce of gold and you got 85 ounces of silver, 7 or 8 months later, you would have only needed 37 ounces to trade back into that 1 ounce of gold. You make 2.5 times what you started with nearly. And that's kind of where we are right now. And so silver is depleting and expanding. And the real price hasn't been really determined for years because the West has been suppressing it to make high-tech weapons, to be the most dominant superpower militarily in the world. And so maybe that's why India and other countries like Russia, China is the second largest producer in the world, and they're flying all around South America, namely Peru, and buying up all of the doré and concentrate, which is disintermediating the marketplace. No one knows how much they're buying. They're paying double what the West will and refining it back in China. Russia's buying it for their strategic stockpile, the first government to admit it. And India has bought 900 million ounces in the last 4 or 5 years. That's more than the COMEX and the LBMA combined. Do they know what's going on with you? Bet your ass they do. They know exactly what we're doing and have been doing, and they're using it against us. And the draining and the acceleration of the draining is a realization that now the jig is up. So everyone's trying to get it as fast as they can and bring it home. It hasn't spilled over quite yet into the retail market. It will. It's just that the retail market isn't being told what's happening. People don't watch you and I like they should. They watch ABC and NBC and Fox and CNBC, and they're not being told what's really happening by design. But yeah, I think that ratio of gold to silver is the play of it's the trade of a generation. If I said to you, look, man, we can do this. You give me your gold, and for you to double what you started with, all that has to happen is it goes back to its 200-year average, price average. And at that rate of 42 to 1, if it's coming out of the ground at 7 to 1, it's 6 times overvalued compared to its geologic ratio. And at what point, if you have to mine at a 7 to 1 ratio for an extended period of time, but it's priced at 85 to 1, when does that ratio, the reality of the math of it all, start to come into focus? You can mine it at 7 to 1 and sell it at 85 to 1 for perpetuity. You go broke in a matter of days. Well, at some point, the ratio in ground has to come in line with the price. The price has been fugazi for so long. When it finally is set free, who knows how high it goes. If you just took the price of gold today and divided by 42, I think you get about $7 an ounce. Well, how about divide it by 7, which is the geologic ratio? Yeah. Now you're talking $400 an ounce. And that wouldn't be outlandish for me to say that. It's actually logical and backed by substance. It's just we've been brainwashed through the suppression for a long period of time into believing that silver doesn't have a future and just really cheap. And, you know, the counterintuitive nature of it all has made everyone say, screw it and go elsewhere. To me, it's the trade of a generation.